youth. Not sure if you guys are going to remember this, but hopefully you will. The last song that we just sang in worship, was it familiar to any of you guys? Yeah, a few hands. Okay. And did you guys just start school recently? Yeah. Are you starting school soon? Very soon. Okay. Did the elementary? Oh, it's tomorrow. Okay. So do you guys remember last school season what Pastor Tony gave you guys as a challenge for that song? To sing it in the hallways. Yeah, so I just thought it was really unique that we sang that song tonight. That was what the worship team had chosen, and that school started back so soon. And so before I talk about Nepal, I just wanted to remind you guys of that. To just as you start the school year, to have that joy of Jesus and be singing no other name but Him, even as you walk through the hallways, even out loud, as PT would say, very, very loudly. But no, I don't expect you to shout it. Anyway, so just a little reminder. Hello to the rest of you. I thank you guys for coming to hear about Nepal tonight, something that is so dear to my heart. You guys know a little bit of my history. I'm going to do a little synopsis before I begin, for those of you who don't know and for those of you who may not remember. But about this time last school year, or last year, I was getting ready to leave for college. And we went on that youth retreat. Those of you who were with us remember we did mission cross group out at the lake, and more clearly than ever, I heard God spoke to me and tell me that I was not supposed to go to school. I was supposed to take a year off from school and just really serve Him and work on falling in love with Him and spending every day with Him. So that's what I did. I took the year off. I got to spend the majority of it with you guys in the youth ministry, and got to go to Nashville and India, and my last trip landed me in Nepal. So tonight I'm going to tell you a few stories from Nepal that are really dear to my heart. A whole month of experiences was really hard to condense into a speech, so you have to forgive me for all the parts that I leave out. But Landon has so graciously offered to put a few pictures on the screen for me, so if you can put the first one up, Landon. This is a picture of my team. You have to forgive the picture quality. They've been transferred through a few different devices and whatnot. But right before I was about to go to India in February, I'm sure you guys remember that, I had wanted to go to Nepal and not India. But the group that I go on my trips with, there wasn't a trip available to Nepal. And I was really heartbroken, but I really felt like God was leading me to go on that trip to India. So I accidentally discovered that there was a trip planned for Nepal like a month later, and it was the same price. And I was really, really upset when I discovered that, because I wanted to be on that trip. I wanted to be going to Nepal. And I actually, for a brief moment, was very upset, and I tried to see if there was any way I could switch over my funds so that I could go on that trip to Nepal instead of to India. And now I see clearly why I ended up in Nepal, or in India then, and Nepal now. But I was trying to put that form in on the computer, because we have to submit these forms for more information when you want to go on a trip. So I tried to submit this form to say, I would like more information, I want to go on this trip to Nepal, because it showed on the computer that it was the only trip for Nepal they had planned for the whole year. This was back in March. So I tried to submit the form, and I tried to submit the form, and it wouldn't go through. So I finally had to call the lady, and the lady turned out to be this tiny little blonde lady beside me in the picture. I've always been the shortest everywhere, but for once there was someone shorter than me. This is Miss Lisa, and she's from California. But I couldn't get it to work, so I called up the lady in charge of the trip, and I talked to Miss Lisa. Gosh, we had to talk for half an hour, and I just told her how much I love Nepali people, how much I wanted to go to Nepal, but I don't know why it happened this way. I'm on this route to India, and I can't switch over to Nepal. And she told me when we were getting ready for the conversation to end, she said, Sarah, just after hearing your heart, I really feel like God wants me to share something with you. And she said, there's this trip that I'm taking this summer. It's a closed trip. It's not open to the public. That's why it's not posted online. But it's this group of college students I take in the summer for a month. She said, and I would like to invite you to join us on that trip. So this trip I should have never heard of, this trip that wasn't even open to me in the first place, God worked it all out, and it all fell together so that I got to join all these other students who were from a college in California. They all knew each other before our trip, which was kind of intimidating that they all knew each other and I didn't know any of them. And it's funny because actually one of them sent me a letter, and I got it last week. And he said, I have to tell you, a couple days before we met you, I was just terrified for you because you didn't know any of us. And that just made me chuckle. But getting to be with them was such a great picture to me of the body of Christ. I'm sure you guys have heard of that, how we all fit together, how we all have a different function, we all have different gifts, and they work together. And that is how this felt together with this team. The things that they weren't good at, I was good at. The things I wasn't good at, they were good at. And we all just fit together so perfectly, and they just pulled me into their little family and loved on me. I felt like I'd known them forever. So God definitely knew what he was doing when he put us together. Only problem now is that they're in California and I'm in Florida and I miss them terribly. But it was really neat. We went to Nepal to do PBS. I'll tell you guys about that a bit more in a minute. I wrote a speech, and you guys know from hearing me teach that I'm just really not much of a speechwriter. I don't follow speeches well. So I tried really hard to write a speech to make sure I get everything in. But I just had to pitch it. I tossed it out the window because I couldn't follow it. So I have this little list of things I'm trying to follow, and hopefully I'm going to get it all in for you guys. So in our next picture, okay, there we go. In our next picture, this is Miss Lisa with her sons. And it's a really, really unique story about the group that we got to work with in Nepal. Miss Lisa has been doing mission trips for, I want to say 16 years now is what she told me. Don't quote me on that. I think 16. But a few years ago, she started working with this group in Nepal. And all three of these guys are brothers. And when she started working with them, their father was still alive. And she got to know him pretty well and was telling me about how he came to know Christ. And she was telling us that back when these boys were younger, their mother was very sick. And there's a lot of arranged marriages in Nepal, but he truly loved his wife. And because she was so sick, he took her all over to Nepal, all over these different doctors, trying to find out what was wrong with her, trying to get her some kind of healing. And one day, he was just at the end, he was done. You know, he felt like he tried everything, there was nothing else he could do, and they were going home. And this man stopped them and dug something up out of the ground and gave it to him. And he said, you take this home with you. You do not tell anyone where you got it from. Do not tell anyone that you have it. Take it home and read it to your wife, and it will bring her healing. So he took this gospel tract home, and he read it to his wife, and she was healed, and they both radically accepted Christ. This was back when Christianity was unheard of in Nepal, and so this man, their father, actually began the entire Christian movement in the eastern end of Nepal. So we were able to go to this little town of Tamari where it all began, where they lived, where they grew up, the very first church that they had there. We got to go there and see that all. It was just incredible to hear the ways that God brings himself to the tiniest little areas and the tiniest little situations and uses one person to tell half of the country. So that was incredible. But unfortunately, their mother passed away, and then a few years ago, their father also passed away. So because Miss Lisa got the privilege of knowing him when he passed away, she just loves his kids so much. They have so many siblings. I was not able to keep them straight or get them straight in the time that I was there. I know they had at least one other brother and two sisters. These are the main ones that we worked with. And so now she just loves them so much. They call her mom, they're her sons, and their wives and their grandkids. And so she just has this big family in Nepal that she gets to love on and go see at least twice a year. And it was just really beautiful to get to see that and have a picture of, you know, the Bible tells us that God adopts us as his own, and just getting to see how she just takes them in and loves on them, even though, you know, they're on the other side of the world. And so the one standing beside her, the one in the black shirt without the glasses, his name is Yuvaraj. So a lot of people have trouble saying his name. That's spelled really funny, but it would be like saying you are Savannah or you are Christy. It's Yuvaraj. And so he is, when he was 14, he started a ministry called One for Christ Ministry. And he's always just had this great heart for ministry. He does these big, I can't think of the word, like conferences. It's a bunch of people together so we can tell them about Christ. And so whenever Lisa started connecting with them with E3, he actually became an E3 partner. So he is the E3 partner head for Nepal. So anyone that goes on a trip with E3 and goes to Nepal goes through Yuvaraj. So Lisa always does her trips with him, gets to see him every time she goes. And these are his two brothers. The one on this side, I can actually show you guys. I spoke the other night and it was so confusing because the screens were backwards and my rights and lefts were all flipped around. Anyway, the guy on this side with the glasses, his name is Ruben. And while we did VBS there, Ruben was my translator. It was really awesome to get to work with Ruben because Ruben has, his ministry is through theater. So he likes to make short films and skits and drama. So being able to tell the stories to the little kids in VBS fit him perfectly. He could just keep their attention and tell them the stories loud, and it was just a lot of fun to get to work with him. So while we were there, I mentioned already, we did VBS. And we had this great plan of exactly how VBS was going to work out. Now, when we think of VBS here in America, we think of, big church building, lots of different rooms, lots of decorations. VBS in Nepal is very different. It's actually very interesting, I have to mention this. Whenever I got on this trip with Miss Lisa, I didn't find out until we were in Nepal that Miss Lisa is the only one in all of E3 who does a trip longer than 2 weeks. She's the only one that does the month-long trip, and this was the very first time that any E3 expedition had used VBS as a tool, which is really neat for those of you who, I grew up here, I've been around VBS my whole life. I just love VBS, love working with the kids. And so it fit me perfectly exactly what I wanted to be able to do. But our plan for VBS was during the 3 weeks we were there, we were going to do VBS at 3 different places. And they had the places all worked out, they had them picked out. We were going to go do VBS in the morning, and then after we got to know some of the kids, we'd go back in the afternoon and be like, hey, can you take me to your house? I want to meet your mom and dad, I want to see where you live. Because we would just go in like the middle of the village, and white people with fun-colored balls just naturally attract a giant crowd of kids. So sometimes we would just be walking through the street, and in Nepal saying come is the word ow, which was really confusing for me at first because people would just be going ow, ow, ow. And it was like, well, what's wrong? But in Nepal it means come. So we would just walk through the streets and some little kids would go ow, ow, and they would just come. We would be walking down the street with this big crowd of kids walking behind us, and they loved the bright colored soccer balls. And but anyway, got a little sidetracked there. So the plan was to go in the morning, and because like any culture, any people, they want to know that you genuinely care about them, that you're not just there with an agenda or some underlying reason. They want to know that you actually love them. And so our plan was to actually get to spend time with the kids, play games with them, do stories and crafts and sing, and so that people in the community would get used to seeing us and see that we sincerely care about our kids, that we're not just there to force some religion down their throat and then leave, but we want to love on them and spend time with them and get to know them. So then by Friday, we would invite all the parents to come to the program, because in Nepal you don't want to lead children to Christ, because then their families could reject them or kick them out for being switched over to Christianity. So the goal is to share the gospel with all the families together at one time, so that they can make that as a family decision, so that the parents can come to Christ, and because that's just how things are passed down generationally in Nepal. But of course we know you have to make that decision of Christianity for yourself. Your parents accepting Christ in no way makes you a Christian, but for them, seeing that their parents did it would allow them to feel okay in changing their religion. And then the guy over here on the far side, his name is Almos, and he's another one of their brothers. But Almos just has this deep, beautiful spirit. He's kind of quiet, always taking everything in, but when he says something, it is profound, and he's just a great man of God. And one of the things he told us when we were leaving, he said, all the groups that have come here, you have been the group that has done the most real ministry. He said, out of everyone that's been here, you have loved. And at first, when our group first got there, like I said, we had that original plan. Everything got changed around. Our plan got totally turned upside down. We ended up going to 4 different VBS locations because at one we got kicked out of. The Hindus wouldn't let us stay. And out of those 4 locations, only one of them was out of the original ones that we had planned. And we ended up not being able to go in the mornings, we had to go in the afternoons, and everything was just kind of crazy. And we just kind kind of wondered some mornings when we were at home, are we really being productive? Are we really making an impact? And one of the verses that God really spoke to me and we were able to learn on as a team is from Psalms. It's chapter 46, verse 10. And the verse says, "Cease striving and know that I am God. My name will be known in the nations. My name will be exalted in all of the earth." And I've heard that verse growing up. A lot of us have heard it, and generally in a normal translation it says, "Be still and know that I am God." But I had never seen it in this translation as "cease striving and know that I am God." And of course, to be still would mean to cease anything, to stop and just be still. But seeing it from that perspective just kind of clicked for me. And he was just able to bring us all such peace and be able to love on each other, because something that I definitely always think is that these people in these other countries, these Christians, like, they have such a great faith because they have to persevere constantly, They worry with having to stop for their faith, They're not around Christians like we get to be around Christians all the time. And so I always thought, wow, what great Christians they are. And in reality, they understand suffering a lot more than we do, but they're people too. And they cannot just constantly be Energizer bunnies that are always ministry, ministry, ministry. They need some downtime to be loved on by other Christians and to be reminded that the work that they're doing is, very profitable. And so just being able to spend that time with them and love on them and kind of recharge in the mornings was what Almost was sharing with us, is how we can constantly be so go, go, go and so busy. It's something even that the American society has taught us. In order to be being successful, you have to be constantly busy. And we don't take the time to cease striving and be still and know that he is God, and just spend time with him and develop our relationship with him, so then we can develop a deeper relationship with other Christians, so then ministry just naturally flows out of the love that we have for him and for each other. And so that was something that Almost really saw and really pointed out to us, and it was really beautiful to me, just getting to see that in action and wanting to be able to bring that back and do that now. There's a famous quote, and it says, "Missions exist because worshipers do not." And I think I might have shared that with you guys when I got back from India. It's something that just caught my attention the first time I heard it, and I'm continuously learning what that means. And one of the guys on our trip actually used to work at Disney. So he had some really interesting insight on the definition of a mission. And he told us at Disney, the mission of being a Disney employee is to bring happiness. Disneyland's supposed to be the happiest place on earth. So they tell all their employees, your mission is to bring happiness. If there's a little kid that they have a huge pin collection, this was actually a real story that happened to him. This little kid had lost his entire pin collection that he'd been collecting. And so Zach was able to go in the Disney store and buy an entire new pin collection for this boy and give the receipts to Disney on Disney, because we're providing happiness for someone. And so he was just expressing to us that gave him a whole new perspective on the word mission, and how so often we can go on these mission trips and our mission can be to evangelize. And although that's a good goal and a good mission, that shouldn't be our mission. Our mission should be to worship God in everything that we do, and naturally from that worship, naturally from loving him, we're going to want to tell people about him. We shouldn't just have to make it the priority, which is the priority. I hope I'm expressing that in a way that makes sense to you. But we shouldn't have to force ourselves for it to be the goal, to tell people about Jesus, because we should be loving on him and worshiping him so much already that that love just flows out of us and other people see him in us. So I'm going to encourage you guys that too as you start the school year. And my heart will sing no other name but Jesus as you're going back to work, as you're going to work daily, whatever you're doing. May your heart sing no other name but Jesus, and may you be a worshiper of him constantly, so that naturally missions is occurring in our everyday life, so that we're missionaries right here in school, in college, wherever we're at. So Lincoln, if you could go to the next picture, please. Oh man, I really hate how much these pictures got distorted. But this is a gentleman from down our street, and we do not know his name. It breaks my heart that we don't know his name because I really would love to associate a name for him. But he had special needs. He was mentally handicapped, and so he couldn't speak. He could kind of speak, but we could tell he could hear what we were saying. He would respond to what we were saying. He would clap or get really happy. But the place that we stayed is their ministry center that they were able to recently build with some funds that were donated. And they built it right in the middle of this village that needs a lot of help. A village full of wife beaters and drunkards and thieves, a really rough village, so that they could be the light of Jesus there. And so this ministry center is becoming known for a place that you can go get a meal, that you can go get some medication, you can just go get some help. And so sometimes he can't walk either. So sometimes he'll come crawling down the street just to get a haircut from your garage, or just to be around other people, because unfortunately the Hindu religion is not very kind to anyone who is born with any form of defect. Because in their religion they believe that you're reincarnated. So they believe if the only reason you would be born with something wrong with you is because you did something incredibly wrong in your past life. And so they're afraid to be associated with you in any way because they don't want to displease the gods, which of course we as Christians know that's not true and that's not how that works. And so these Christians are able to kind of help take care of him and look out for him. But one day, with our VBS music really loud, he heard and he came wandering down the street, and he was able to sit there and color a picture and have a lollipop, and he just sat there and clapped and smiled, and it brought so much joy to all of us, the vibrant joy in this man's face, and just being able to see that in so many people's faces as we would tell them about Jesus, as we could just feel the Spirit and feel Jesus and how that would vibrantly light up other people knowing that they could feel him too, was such an incredible, amazing thing for me. And just knowing that people with special needs are not beyond knowing who Jesus is. And I've got to see that in my own life, which is another story for another time. But so this man just really, really blessed my heart. Click. Okay, this is a picture of bracelets from one of our Bible stories. When it started out at VBS, I was assigned, we kind of divided the kids into age groups, and so I was assigned to working with one of the age groups, getting them from section to section. And a few days into the first VBS, the guy who was telling the story was kind of lost on what to do with the next story, and so they brought me over and were like, hey, we really want to tell them about the main points of Jesus, but we don't quite know how to do it on a kid level, and can you help us out, give us some insight? So I gave them this whole layout of the way we would explain Jesus in India, and I wandered away. In a few minutes they came and found me, and they were like, can you just do it? Because it was, like half an hour till VBS time. So that day I offered to teach the Bible story as an example, but from there on out, they just said, you know what, you did such a great job with the Bible story. Can you keep teaching the Bible story? And for me, one of my spiritual gifts is definitely teaching, and especially to children. I just love it. So it's such a huge blessing to be able to teach these Bible stories every day to the kids. And I would teach different things about who Jesus is. And this day, the bracelets represent the 5 loaves of fish and the 2 bread. So there are 7 little beads on the bracelet, and I still have mine on my wrist. But and that story that day taught us that Jesus can provide all of our needs. There would be a different theme every day. So if you guys don't know the story, there was a large crowd that was really hungry, and Jesus did a miracle. And out of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, he fed over 5,000 people because he multiplied the food into enough to feed all of them. And of course, little kids thought that was the coolest thing. And so we would have a theme for different days, like Jesus has power over all creation, or Jesus has power over all the spirit world, because the spirit world is very big there. Evil, and they're very exposed to that kind of thing. So getting to tell them the story about Jesus casting the demons out of the demon-possessed man, and just getting to see their faces and tell them the stories and love on them, this Jesus that they had never heard of before, was amazing. And it really struck a chord in my heart on the times when we weren't teaching them, when we were just getting to love on them, play with them, and see them laugh. One of the Bible verses I've heard since I was younger is Matthew 25:40. And it's where Jesus says, "But what you've done unto the least of these, you've done to me." And I'd always heard that story, but it wasn't until one day, just loving on these little kids, that clicked for me, that I could just see Jesus and just really understand the definition of worship. That what I was doing, sharing him, was actually loving him by loving his creation. And that was just such an incredibly beautiful moment. So, click, next picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. Every day, the theme that we would have, like I said, we couldn't say a gospel prayer with the kids because we couldn't convert them to Christianity. Number one, because that's still illegal in Nepal, but number two, because we wouldn't want them to be shunned from their families. That would be very dangerous for them. But after the theme every day, they would thank Jesus. Ruben would have them say a prayer in some way, thank you, Jesus, for being the provider of all of our needs. Thank you, Jesus, for your beautiful creation. And these little kids would just bow their heads and pray so earnestly. And it was incredibly, incredibly beautiful getting to see them just acknowledge Jesus. Because I can't even. Next picture. This is a group of ladies that we got to work with. The lady right here in the middle with the white scarf around her neck, her name is Lydia. And she is a pastor's daughter in Nepal, and she is 18. And she is completely in charge of the children's ministry. And she really just was not quite sure what she was doing, She knew she loved kids, and she knew that she wanted to help them. But this was one of those original locations that were not planned, that God just dropped into our lap, that we ended up going to. And I cannot tell you how grateful and thankful she was, because we not only went and did the VBS in the areas, but we trained those that we worked with. So people from local churches would be there. The first VBS we did, the first day we had 25 people show up to be trained to use this program, and majority of them were not from the area. They came from other areas to learn how to relate to children so that they could take it back to their area. So we did 4 VBSs, but just knowing how much that's going to multiply and touch other areas brings my heart a lot of joy. But there were just lots of little fun things that we got to do. Like in Nepali, the word mosquito is pronounced lamkute. So, in America, we'll do little things to get the kids to listen, like look up or thumbs up or whatever. So in Nepal, we would do lamkute, and then they'd have to chop their hands together, chop, and everybody would listen. And so they would chase the mosquito and smack it, and that was when you were supposed to be quiet. And all of the Nepali adults were just so amazed by that there was this magic trick to get kids to be quiet. And it was just the best thing, just these little things that we know from working with children so constantly, because in Nepal and most third world countries, children and women are not held in any form of respect or esteem. And multiple pastors saying, wow, I have never thought of children in this way and saw that they needed to know Christ. Because the reality is, I can't remember the exact statistic, and I should know it by now. I've heard Lisa quote it so many times. But I want to say it's like 80% of Christians come to know Christ before the age of 10. I know it's somewhere around 80%. It might be like 82% before the age of 10. And just being able to, that's an American statistic, but just being able to help these pastors see this is your next generation. These are going to be the ones who go and tell others about Christ for your country to, rise up. And so they were just so amazed and impressed by that. And Lydia was just so grateful. And I've actually been able to be a friend with her on Facebook, and she sent me a couple messages. Hey, I did that in Sunday school this morning. And hey, all the kids from VBS that came, I couldn't get them to come to Sunday school, but I had so many kids in Sunday school this morning because they wanted to come hear more Bible stories about Jesus. And those things just wow my heart, because we were there for a month, but it's still such a short time. You don't get to see the multiplication of the effect of the things that you did, but being able to occasionally receive an email from them that says, something you did had an impact is so wonderful. So, click. This next picture, after the time when we were done doing whatever our part was with BBS, we would attract a crowd of adults, of older brothers and sisters that would maybe bring their younger sibling to the program. And sometimes at this BBS, You can see that fence and the little wall in the background. We would have kids stacked on top of each other, packed in there, which in Nepal is like the best thing ever. If there are lots of people packed on top of each other, if there are so many people that they shouldn't fit in the space, that is a wonderful thing in Nepal. They think it's the best ever. That means that something good is happening. And for us in America, we would be very uncomfortable, and it is so hot. But they were all packed in there and just so happy to be there. And all these older siblings and parents would come pile around the gate and lean over the fence to hear and to see. And so when we were done with the kids, maybe at this point, some kids were at crafts and some were at game time, and we would be able to stand there and share the gospel with the parents and older siblings that had come. And for me, like I mentioned this earlier, but just being able to share the joy of Jesus and see him light up their faces, hearing about him for the first time, that there's no other feeling in the world. Just people's response to Jesus, their amazement by this man that would die for them. Like, that's just not part of their religion, nothing that they've ever heard before. So it's just this totally astounding concept to them. Click. This is just a picture of Nepal. Nepal is full of bare feet, and those of you who know me know that I do not like shoes. I'm almost always barefoot, which I love. I love that, the way that God connects us with things that are so much like us. And he definitely knew what he was doing when he led me to Nepal, because first off, I'm the average height for their culture, which is perfect. They told me, you're the only American that's ever Nepali size, which they're used to Lisa, but the same height as their culture, and just. Or you go on and on about things that fit me, that fit their culture. But being barefoot is one of those things. And always before you go in anywhere, you take your shoes off. And I popped this picture up. I have lots of pictures of shoes everywhere. But this picture, just to remind me of this VBS, because as I said, Lisa's been going to this area in Nepal for a while now. And we had this little twin set of boys at this VBS. They were about 4 years old. And they were the cutest things, and sometimes they were little terrors, but they were cute and they were fun. And just seeing twins was abnormal in the first place, so they kind of stood out to us, and they were really young. And anyway, one day Lisa went with Yurash off to another, which is a very interesting story because we weren't supposed to end up at this VBS either. The VBS before, the one I told you about with Lydia, we had attracted such a big crowd and so much attention that the Hindus in the area were very upset that we were there and we had to leave. We weren't able to come back and continue our whole program, which was heartbreaking at first, but when we realized we were able to go to another area, that was great. So we only got to spend 2 days at this VBS, but Lisa got to reconnect with a woman that she met 4 years ago. And when she met this woman 4 years ago, she was possessed with demons. And so they prayed over this woman, and her husband was so upset because he wanted to have children, he wanted to have someone to carry on his name, and she couldn't get pregnant. And anyway, so Lisa prayed over this woman, cast out demons, and in all the time she's been going back to Nepal, she never saw the woman again. She hadn't been back to this area, and so we went back, and she didn't recognize the woman. The woman actually never came to the church. But one day, Yuvraj wanted to go a little ways away from the church to do something, and Lisa was kind of frustrated, actually, because she didn't want to go. She wanted to stay with us and do the VBS, but Yuvraj was like, no, Mom, come with me. Just come with me, and because he was hungry. He wanted to go get something to eat. And she was like, are you kidding me? We want to do the VBS program. I don't want to go with you to get something to eat. But she went with him, and here, where he went to get something to eat, she ran into this woman and her husband. And she found out that this woman, soon after she had been released from those demons, had conceived. And these 2 little precious twin boys we had running around were her sons. And it was just such a beautiful story, getting to hear her share that with us and the joy of that, how we may not see the effects right now of the things that we did, or the things that we're doing here, even in America, but a few years from now, how those things will be made known, and how God will give us the joy and those bright stories to show his glory, and to give us the joy and the energy to continue on and to be able to carry on doing those things. So that was just one of my favorite stories from the trip. Click. This is a picture of many of our fun adventures. like I said, in Nepal, everybody ends up packed on top of each other. We rode like this for over an hour, and I could not feel the lower half of my body when we were done, but it was a great time. The Nepali faces in this picture are the main four that translated for us that were our age. I won't tell you their names because it took me forever to get them down pat, and you won't remember. But these four, really everyone that we worked with, we lived with, we ate with, we were constantly around them, which was an incredibly bonding experience, because the other trips I've been on, you just work with the translator a little bit during the day, you don't see them a whole lot, so you don't really bond to them, but being with these guys all day, every day, which was, I think, part of where Amos was coming from, having that relationship was where our love and our ministry flowed so smoothly, because we were just used to being with each other. But we went on so many adventures together on our weekends. We would get like a day off to go do something, and we did the craziest things. I'm scared of heights, but we climbed across these crazy suspension bridges, these rickety bamboo ladders. We got to go to the world's largest tea garden, and we just got to make many, many more memories full of laughter and just being around others full of Christ. And it was such a beautiful picture to me of church, actually. How we just have church. We don't have it entirely wrong, but we don't quite get the concept fully, I don't think. And we here, I mentioned our schedule and how we have everything scheduled out, and we have to go, and keep to our schedule to be productive and be successful. And so we have this block of time set out for church on Sunday, we have this block of time set out for church on Wednesday, and they have a block of time set out for church as well, their scheduled weekly service. But almost any given time, anywhere you go with these guys, you can just have church. We're playing a game of cards, and somebody starts talking about a Bible verse. We just get in this big discussion of the Bible verse, or someone wants to worship, so we end up in an hour and a half worship session. So all these crazy adventures, but so full of God and so full of joy, and just being able to have church anywhere, because we are the body, we are the church, and wherever we are, we can have church, we can worship. And that was just such an incredible picture to be able to see in everyday life in action. So click. One of the last fun adventures that we went on was to one of the Hindu temples. We actually got to go to several Hindu and Buddhist temples. But if you guys see here, in that floor that looks like it's painted red, that's blood. There was so much blood at these temples because in their religion they have to go and sacrifice animals to have themselves cleansed, their sins forgiven. And going to these temples was such an incredible picture to me of what Jesus has done for us. Because we understand that Jesus died for us, but seeing their culture and how uptight they are about every little thing they do bad, they have to go repent, they have to have an animal to sacrifice, much like the beginning of Christianity was. They had to go sacrifice their animal to have their sins forgiven. And then Jesus came and died for us, so we don't have to do this anymore. And of course we know their sacrificing animals is in vain, but it still is just such a crazy, it's just such an abstract thought that they would have to sacrifice an animal to have their sins forgiven. And this temple actually was one of the strangest ones we went to. This temple was based off of love and relationship. So what you do, guys, if you're a new couple, you go to the temple and you buy a chicken. It has to be a perfect chicken. And you take the chicken to the first priest, and he cuts its head off, and, well, actually he doesn't cut its head off, he just wrings it its neck and throws it out, and it's flopping around. Well, actually, matter of fact, he does cut the head off, sorry. I'll get this straight in a minute. He wrings the neck, chops the head off, and throws it out. And that's where all this blood comes from, because there's all these chickens flopping violently and shooting blood everywhere. So then you take some of your blood from the chicken, and you sprinkle it on these two little pigs that are tied up right there in all the blood. And according to which way the pig shakes its head is according to if your relationship has good luck or not. And then you take your chicken over to the next station, to the next priest, and they splice it open, and they read you your fortune from the guts of the chicken. And they tell you if your relationship is going to have a good fortune or not. And unfortunately, people believe this so much that it's so accurate that some couples who would get a negative reading from their chicken guts, they would actually go and hang themselves themselves and truly survive because they so rely on these signs from their gods because they believe in them so greatly. And it was just so interesting to me thinking, if I had been born in Nepal, if any of us had been born in Nepal, this would be normal to us. This would be the religion that we were used to. We wouldn't know who Jesus was. And just what a blessing it is to have been born in America and been raised in Christianity. How we take that so for granted. Because I went through a phase when I was, 15 or so, where I thought, well, I was born in this, I was raised in this is all I've ever been told. What if I'm like the people in Nepal who believe in the wrong God, So I went on that journey for myself, and for a year, almost a year, I said, I don't believe in this Christianity, I don't believe in this God, they got it all wrong. And I can tell you without a doubt, the God that Christianity serves is the one true God. The God in Nepal is not the 3.2 million gods they believe in, that they were raised to believe in, is not the one true God. The God that other countries and religions believe in is not the one true God. And just being able to know that with such certainty is an incredible feeling. I hope if any of you don't, that you can come to terms with that you can seek him. He says, when you seek for me with all of your heart, you will find me. So if you don't know without a doubt that the Christianity you have been raised in and you have been exposed to is accurate, is the one true God, seek that for yourself. Because the promises that God makes to us are promises. They are truth. And if you seek him with everything you have, he will reveal yourself to him. Click, Lindsay. We have one more picture for you guys tonight. This is a sad, sad story. And I hate sharing it because it just kind of gives a sad ending to this. But it was a sad ending to our trip. The day before we were about to get on our plane to leave Nepal, we had woke up that morning and there was kind of some chaos in the street and we didn't really know what was going on. And so we went back inside and I guess Miss Lisa went out to kind of see what was going on. And she came back inside and she was just sobbing. And we learned a lot about the Hindu culture and religion that day. But when someone passes away in Nepal, they bring their body out in the street for everyone from the village to come by and pay their respects. And that morning we learned that this little girl who had been in our VBS, her name is Malika, in the night she had passed away. She lived just a few houses down from us. And it was an awful day. I can't tell you how horrible it was. We cried all day. We went to her funeral, and their funerals are also so different from ours. I won't explain all about it, but in those moments when we had wondered, are the things that we're doing really productive? Is what we're doing here, does it have importance? In such an awful way, we got our answer. Out of the 98% unemployment rate in Nepal, that means 98% of the people living in Nepal, the huge majority, do not have a job of any sort. They're completely unemployed. So that alone is hard to provide and take care of your family. But as a mother in Nepal, when you have children, you can expect over half of those children to not live past childhood. And when we went to her funeral, they actually buried her beside her little brother. He was 5 when he passed away. And it's such an awful thing, but such an answer that, first off, we don't know when we're going to pass away. Of course, in America, we have advanced medicine. We live longer, but you don't know when you're going to be in a car accident, when there's going to be a freak accident. And second off, even though we were telling VBS to little children and we weren't allowed to share the gospel with them in a way that they could be converted to Christianity, they had heard of Jesus. And they had sang songs to him, and they had said, Jesus, we love you, and they had prayed to him. And I believe without a doubt in my heart that acknowledgement of him, if they meant it, if that clicked for them, and they were sincerely saying those words and those prayers, Jesus, we love you. Jesus, thank you for your creation. We believe in you. And I know her little sunshine and bright happiness and just the way that she praised Jesus, I would like to say with my whole heart, I know she's in heaven. And of course, I can't know that for a fact because I'm not God and I don't know everything. But I know that when these little kids heard about Jesus, they brightened up. They understood Jesus, and they felt the joy of him. And so I just want to remind you guys, all the things I've shared tonight. First off, Jesus is real. Second off, it's such a huge blessing that you've heard of him your whole life. Don't take that for granted. You know, you never know. This little girl, I'm sure she didn't think that the last time she fell asleep was going to be that night. Life is so short. You know, if you don't have everything figured out with Jesus, start right now. And I know I miss you guys so much, and being able to walk in that faith with you, but I know the leaders, especially the youth and adults, the leaders that you have are more than welcome to at any point in time answer any questions you have about Jesus or walk in that faith with you. Even some of the student leaders, just if you have questions about Jesus, don't leave here tonight without talking to someone about him, because you don't know when the last moment can be. And so I just want to thank you guys all for listening. I know some of this was really heavy-hearted, but joyfully also, I can tell you that Nepal is full of joyful Christians who love Jesus with passion, and they are spreading his name like fire. So as you think of them, say a prayer for them that, you know, they'll have the energy to carry on, because their lives are dedicated to ministry all day, every day. They're telling people about Jesus. They're doing his work. They're doing after-school programs. They're giving out medical information. They're giving out food when they may not have enough food to eat, just to spread his name. So have joy in knowing that our one true God's name is being spread across the nation, and have joy in knowing that the Jesus and the God you're worshiping here tonight is alive and he's well. I thank you.